All right, so now I'm going to take a couple of minutes to go over finding a specific term in binomial expansion. We've talked about in class how to actually do the binomial expansion, how to work it out and actually show the whole thing after we've expanded it. But sometimes, like in this case where it's something in 12th power, that's going to have 13 terms, which means we don't really want to have to write out the whole thing if we don't have to. So I'm going to show you two ways. One way is going to be using the equation from class, which is this one. Now, keep in mind that this equation is not given to you in an IB booklet, but if you memorize it, then you are welcome to use it. You can do it through reasoning, which I'm going to show you that way as well. But keep in mind, remember, n is this exponent, okay, which tells you which row on Pascal's triangle starting with row 0. So the 1 is row 0, 1, 1 is row 1, and so on and so forth. R is the element. Now remember, the actual term, the first term in a specific row is element 0. So both of these, the n and the r, both start with 0 and then go up to whatever that number is. So let's go ahead and look then at this specific problem. Find the coefficient of the x to the 6th term. So our first priority needs to be which term has x to the 6th in it. Now this becomes a little bit difficult because you got an x squared here and you got an x on the bottom there. So it's not just as simple as saying, well, when the exponent here is 3, that would be x squared to the 3rd power, which would be the x to the 6th. It's not quite that easy because you are dividing by things as well. So let me show you how to use the formula first, and then I'll show you how we would kind of think through it and reason through it. My personal preference is the way I'm going to do it second, because that's the thinking and reasoning, and you know that's what you're going to do if you can't remember the equation anyway. But let's go ahead and see if we can find the coefficient of the x to the 6th term, remembering that this is the important part right now, finding which term has x to the 6th. So we are looking for a specific term. We don't know which one it is, which is going to equal, now the n, we do know that, that's 12. But we don't know which element we're looking at. So a, of course, is x squared to the n was 12, minus r. And then b is, of course, negative 4 over x, which, of course, is to the r power. Okay, now, let's go ahead and distribute the exponents and simplify things a little bit, and then we'll go through and we'll work through what we need to do. So this is going to be 12r. This will be x to the 2. Now power over power, remember we multiply. So 2 times 12 minus r, which I'm just going to go ahead and multiply those. That's distributive property. So 24 minus 2r, right? 2 times 12 minus r, 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times minus r is minus 2r. And then here, I'm going to have negative 4 to the r over x to the r. Okay? Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to consider all this and say, okay, out of all this, what is actually important for getting the x to a specific power, right? If we think about this, the 12r, right, this is going to be your NCR on your calculator, which is 12 NCR, then whatever that number is. That's just going to give you a number. It's not going to affect whether x is to the 6th power, the 7th power, the 5th power. So we're going to ignore that just for a little bit. Okay, now this right here, this is important because this is x to a specific power, and whatever r is going to affect the power of x. Okay, we move on to this. If you look at the 4 to the r power, and actually the negative as well, that's all going to affect, again, the coefficient, the number that's in front. That doesn't affect the x to a power. So we're going to take out both the negative and the 4 to the r, just temporarily. It's not gone. It's just not really important to finding the x to the 6th. Which term is that? Is it important to find the actual term? Yes, but not to find out which term it is. And so I'm left here with this. I've got x to the 24 minus 2r, and then on the bottom, I've got x to the r. Now, from here, I should be able to simplify, right? I want this, the x terms, when I put all that together, it should end up giving me x to the 6th, right? So I'm focusing on anything that has an x to a power. Anything else, all the numbers I took out. So here, my exponent rule says that I can subtract. So 24 minus 2r minus r will give me x to the 24 minus 3r, which should then equal x to the 6th. Now once I have this, obviously I can do log base x, which would leave me with 24 minus 3r equals 6. Subtract 24 from both sides. 6 minus 24 is negative 18 divided by 3. R equals 6. Okay, so hopefully you found that out, which means we want the sixth element. Now remember, element 6 means actually the 7th term. Knowing that that's the 7th term actually isn't all that important, because now we can just plug all this into our equation, right? So now that I know that r is 6, I can do t of 6 plus 1, which is of course the 7th term, 12, 6, and then I'm going to go x squared to the 12 minus 6, and then negative 4 over 6 all to the 6th power. So now that I know what r is, I can just go ahead and plug that into the equation. And so now I've got the 7th term is 12 over 6. Do that on the calculator, we get 924. Remember, this is just 12 in CR6. Okay, so 924. 12 minus 6 is 6, so that would be x squared to the 6th power, which would be x to the 12th. And then here, oh, sorry, that should be an x on the bottom. So that would be negative 4 to the 6th. That's an even power, which is going to make it positive. 4 to the 6th power is, sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. So I'm just going to go 4 to the power of 6. And I got 4,096. Now this would be over x to the 6th, so x to the negative 6. And now I'll put all that together. So I'll go 496 times 924, which is that long number, 3784704. And I put those together and I get x to the 6th. The question is the coefficient. There you go, 3784704. That is a 4 at the end there. All right, so there we found it using the equation. Now I want to show you also how we would do this without the equation. Okay, just because it may be helpful or valuable to be able to do that. So if we go through the basic idea of being able to do the expansion, right? The very first term should be x squared to the 12th power. Right? That's your a to the 12th. And then it's going to be some number times a to the 11, b to the 1st, right? And then plus some number times a to the 10th, b squared, right? And so we know that's what it should look like. So if I just kind of work through that, x squared to the 12th, that's not going to give me x to the 6th. So I'm going to go on to the next one. The next one would be x squared to the 11th, and b, which was 4 over x, to the 1st. So I've got x squared to the 11th, which is x to the 22, divided by x to the 1st. Okay, that's not 6 either. So we're just going to go on from there. So we're going to try x squared to the 10th, 4 over x squared to the 9th, and then 4 over x. I'm not really working all of these out. I'm just trying to find the one that's going to give me the x. I'm not even looking at the 4. The 4 doesn't matter. You'll notice I'm not even writing down the negative. That doesn't really matter either. What I want is, okay, so that should be x squared to the 8th, 4 over x to the 4th. So now let's look at it. So x squared to the 8th would be x to the 16th, and then over x to the 4th, that's x to the 12th. So I'm still not quite to that x to the 6th term yet. So I need to keep going. And so I'm just kind of reasoning through this. There's shorter ways to do it, but I'm just kind of showing you, if I really had absolutely no idea what was going on, how would I do this? Okay, so we got that. We would then have an x squared to the 6th. So maybe let's check it again. Okay, so that would be x to the 12th, and then this would be x over x to the 6th, so 1 over x to the 6th, which that one you can see now gives me the x to the 6th. Okay, so I now know that this term right here, the one with 6 and 6, is the one I want. Now, of course, that means that this is going to be r equal to 6, and so from there you can go ahead and you can complete the problem, because you can just go, okay, well that means it's going to be 12, 6, because it is element 6 here, element 6, and then, right, we had 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so I don't even have to remember that that's are, I can actually just count them up. Remember, we start at 0, so element 0, element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So element 6, the power was 12, and so then I just go x squared to the 6th, and then negative 4 over x to the 6th, and then I work it out exactly the same as I did once I had the numbers in right there. So this process of writing it out essentially accomplishes the same thing as using the equation and finding what r is. Okay, this way you don't have to really worry too much about n, you don't have to worry too much about r, because you already know that n is 12, and so we're just finding out which of those elements gives us the correct variable. Note again, I didn't pay attention to the number in front, just like here we didn't pay attention to the number in front. Here I ignored the 4 every time. Remember, I wasn't even writing the negative half of the time, so as I pay attention to the 4, I'm not paying attention to that, I'm paying attention to the x on the bottom, and so I'm looking for the place where the variables give me the variable with the correct exponent. Okay, so 2 ways to do that. One through using the equation, one through just writing it out and finding out which one finally gives me what I want it to give me. A little bit of guess and check, but if you write each one out, you just count them up. Element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know it's the 6th element, which is then the 7th term, and you can finish it from there. All right, so I hope that one of these 2 ways is helpful to you as you're doing your homework and other things tonight. All right, ciao.